From the Ticats Audio Network, this is the Ticats This Week with RJ Broadhead and Luke Tasker.
It is game one of the regular season. Ticats this week. We are excited for the Ticats traveling to Saskatchewan, take on the Roughriders. That's where the Grey Cup's going to be. So kind of an interesting little way this played out. First game of the year in Regina. Tiger Cats want the last game of the year in Regina. It would be kind of cool to look back and say, wow, it's all started here and finished in a Grey Cup triumph. I'm RJ Broadhead, all set to call the game on Saturday at 7 o'clock, along with my partner, former Ticat great, Luke Tasker. Just your overall thoughts, Luke, on this upcoming season and what your take on the Ticats is.
Yeah, very excited to see things kick off. It seems to me, don't you get from listening to the interviews this week, players, coaches, there is what seems like an authentic, legitimate excitement to just play football for games that count. And, it's always a fun time of the year when things get going here, but it seems like they're having a blast playing football. The Ticats are. It is interesting to start here where the Grey Cup's going to be. You can say that, certainly that's been brought up in the players' minds this week. I think back to 2013, the season ending in Regina and not well, and then starting off the next year in Regina also not well. It's a hard place to go play. They've got their work cut out for them, but everybody's at 0-0, for their season. It's just a great and exciting fresh moment of the year.
I want to go a little deeper into that, Luke. I was at practice on Thursday, and I asked about that. And offense, you want to be on the same page. They have a lot of veteran guys, which is great, but it's the first game of the year. So you can't expect the communication to be perfect, and you're playing in one of the loudest buildings. The expectations are on the Riders. We saw it last year with Hamilton hosting the Grey Cup, so the Riders fans expect their team to be in that game as well, so it is going to be loud. How difficult is that with kind of the two things interacting with first game of the year, maybe some communication, and it actually being tough to communicate because it's so loud?
Yeah, it will be a loud stadium, and there's a couple places throughout the year that you're going to deal with that. It's hard late in the season too when you can't communicate well. Generally, in my experience with Coach O and Tommy Condell, they're prepared for that kind of thing. You can practice with stadium noise, and really it comes down. Each game plan requires a different amount of at the line of scrimmage communication. It's not like every play there's a ton to get communicated up there, but some plays there are really some things that have to get said, or else the thing's not going to go off well. So you can kind of control that a little bit too, as far as play calling and what's available for a quarterback to change at the line of scrimmage. Offensive linemen struggle with it as well, with the noise. But this early on, I almost think, you've got to make sure you have some somewhat simple winning plays in there. We always talk about, RJ, the toxic ratio. That's Tommy Condell's, combination of your turnover ratio and your explosive plays that you have in a game. And you want to get that number higher and higher as far as takeaways and explosive plays, passes over 20 yards. And that's great. You and I talked about it all last season, and we'll get into it again each week this year. But on top of that toxic ratio that you're always focusing on, I think in a game like this, first down efficiency, you've got to be making some hay and getting up plenty of those first downs where you're getting 5 yards at least, and putting yourself in winnable second down situations. When you're on the road, when you're out west, when it's loud, and you're in 2nd and 8 all night, it is just so hard. You can't find rhythm. You can't move the ball downfield. You start losing the field position battle. It's an uphill battle the whole time. So you've got to be able to take your easy 5-yard gains whenever you can get them.
Yeah, that was a big problem for the Tiger Cats for probably at least the first half of the season. Those first two games were not good. One of those was against the Riders. They were 1-1 against the Riders last year, but obviously different teams now in 2022. But weird games. Tiger Cats were nowhere near what they could do in that first meeting, second game of the year. And then it was also the last regular season game of the season that the Ticats beat the Riders. Riders didn't really have any of their starters. They were resting up for the playoffs, didn't want to injure anyone. So a split last year really doesn't mean much. I want to talk to you about the offense. You mentioned the crowd noise and piping it in the speakers in practice. The Ticats did that this week. They had the speakers cranked, so they'll be somewhat used to it. The other thing that really stands out to me, and we saw it so much last year, and I go back to those first two games, and you didn't really know what to expect, and injuries and all kinds of things the Tiger Cats had to deal with. Still, their resiliency making it to the Grey Cup. But that offense that we're going to see on Saturday against the Riders, it's all veterans. They all have experience now. Jake Burt would be the one rookie starter, but he was with the team all last year, so he's not unfamiliar with things. How much of a difference do you think that will make, that everybody has that experience with the Tiger Cats, knows the system, knows a lot of the plays?
Yeah, I think it's huge. And still sort of on average, you've got a fairly young receiving core, but these guys have game experience. You know, they've played, they've made big catches in big games and scored points. And, certainly Braylon Addison sticks out in my mind as the veteran in that group. But even Dane, whose story has just continued to progress since the day he stepped foot in Canada, you know, his role and his responsibilities have sort of continued to grow. And although now it's like the first time that we see him as being having the spot and it being his, he's got multiple seasons of experience already. So, I think that's going to be incredibly valuable for that unit. On the front, Chris Van Zyl and Brandon Revenberg, you've got two of the great Canadian offensive linemen in the game right now. Van Zyl, many would call him a future Hall of Famer. And that sort of experience goes such a long way. Van Zyl's probably had 20 plus games in Regina over the course of his career, right? Pretty impressive. He's played there a lot more than a lot of the guys on the Saskatchewan Roughriders team, really.
Yeah, probably. So, yeah, you're right.
And so that goes a long way. First game for rookies in the CFL, and you're going out west in a country you already don't know for a lot of the Americans, right? And it's just it's a dynamic world that we exist in as football players, and that experience is gonna be an asset for the Ticats this week and moving forward.
Yeah, they live and breathe their Roughriders in Saskatchewan. I know that from growing up there, but it's good for the Tiger Cats to be immersed in that atmosphere right off the bat and see where they're at. And that's really what you want in that first game, is see where the team is. And I want your thoughts to see if this is a concern at all. So there were preseason games, but Dane Evans threw 5 passes. Stephen Dunbar, Pappy White, David Ungerer, they didn't catch a pass. Tim White didn't even play. Braylon Addison just caught 2 passes. Don Jackson had 2 carries. Sean Thomas Erlington had 2 carries. So the starters on offense didn't play a lot in the preseason. Is that a concern at all?
Coach O and I discussed this in the Coach O show earlier this week on the Ticats Audio Network. And, as players, as a vet, for me, I was kind of good to go. Like, let's kind of get to the season here. I didn't really want to mess around any longer in the preseason, but those stats are telling. It's just not a long training camp anymore. It's not a long preseason. There's not that much time, and guys who have no experience have to get tried out. Like, they have to take those valuable reps so that you can keep, that a healthy depth throughout the season. And that's really what the preseason boils down to is tryouts. And so it does not surprise me that Dane only threw 5 passes in the preseason. And for us, or for Ticat onlookers, you think, boy, like that's not a lot of time to get ready. But I think for the players, I always felt, like ready to go. You get 1 catch in preseason, you're kind of like, all right, let's do this thing. I will say, and Coach O touched on this as well, that a big part of it also is that then having to go play 4 quarters now in Saskatchewan or anywhere for your first game of the season, you can be you get in great shape in the off season and you're lifting and you're running, and then you get into camp and you take a few reps and it's the end of a period and then you change speed. But to go 4 quarters back to back, you just have to get back into that kind of shape and get ready for that type of burden and hustle. So that is always an abrupt change. And I always found in that first game of the season, the first quarter and the second quarter, I remember being gassed. I mean, and it's in the summer, it's hot sometimes, and just exhausted in the first half. And you really know you're in shape when you come back out in the second half and you kind of got it together. Then you kind of gotten yourself into it, and that high energy start to a game, man, you gotta practice that, and there's really practice that as the season goes along. But for this first game, there's nothing that can really prepare you for it.
It's a couple of interesting things there. It's like fighters talk about it. They get so jazzed, and then they have that adrenaline dump, and they're exhausted. So maybe you got to find that happy medium as a player, right? Where you're excited.
Almost cramping in the first drive of a game, but then finishing the whole game, playing fine. But like I was on the verge of cramping up on the field right at the start. I don't know. I think it's some kind of is sports psychology. I think it's some kind of you're so amped up, and you know me, RJ. I hate pregame. I can't stand it. So I had to go on the field an hour and a half early to hold for the kickers, and I'm like, I'm already in pads, and the game is like in 2 hours. Like and so I felt like pregame was too long for me as a player, and I think that was part of it too. I had already been working too hard before the game starts, and that you get that high peak and you almost feel close like you're going to burn out in the first quarter, and then but you truly are in shape, and so that carries you through the rest of the game as you sort of settle down emotionally.
To bring the listeners into our booth, the Ticats Audio Network booth, we've done well over 20 games together, and I would say in every single one of them, probably in the last 30 minutes of warm-up, you're like, what is going on? This is too much.
Right.
So you can't stand the long warm-up. It does seem quite long.
The routes on air and then the 7-on-7. It's like you effectively do a light practice before the game. That was never my thing. You ever see Brett Favre is famous for this. The guy would go on the field and go like kind of go like this, like roll his shoulders and boom, game ready to go. That's kind of more my thing, man. Like I would like 20 minutes to get ready and then let's kick it off and go. Cause I can't I felt like I was already exhausted. I don't know. And some guys are out there, you get guys in the locker room, like you show up, 3 hours before the game. And there's guys like doing bands in the weight room, like stretching out, like with bands and like full sweat workout. I was like, guys, you need to stop. I like to have a coffee like at like -3 hours, kind of stretch, but every time I stretch, I'd be like, whoa, slow down, buddy. You gotta go on the field an hour and a half before this thing starts. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
And you do push-ups. You do push-ups now as an announcer before.
See,
so you do have some of that energy you're trying to burn off.
That's what I'm talking about. I like to do a 30-second warm up and then start the game. Which is my
need.
Broadcaster routine. Notice, RJ, I've never once done any calisthenics up in the broadcasting booth. So that's
just straight strength training.
A couple push-ups, get the blood flowing, put the headset on, let's go.
The other thing that jumps out, and hate to rehash from last year, you talked about playing 4 quarters. The fourth quarter was really odd. Tiger Cats only outscored their opponents 3 times in the fourth quarter in the 14 regular season games. 2 preseason games, they were outscored in both of them. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. I know it began to be a bit of a story for the Tiger Cats. I know Coach O was asked about it, and even some of the players said, yeah, we got to finish these games strong. But they're veteran guys. They would know. I don't want to read too much into the preseason, but that's a trend that has to stop, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, you got to finish. And it was kind of both ways for the Ticats last year. That fourth quarter would make a difference, or they'd be in the lead and still win the game, but they were, the point spread was -16 in the fourth quarter or something weird like that. It's something that's going to get focused on. I think Coach O is the first one to say, though, that the W at the end of the night is the only thing that matters, And you know how I like a weird stat every now and again, but
yes,
we'll come up with some strange ones through the year. And last year there was a lot of sort of statistical anomalies as the season went on. And specifically, we were talking about Toronto so much at the end of the season and how strange their season was in their win-loss compared to some of the stats that are usually very telling of a losing or winning team. But Hamilton last year, as they were up and down and fighting and kind of clawing their way back into first from a tough start to the season, the fourth quarter was not a strength for them. I'm gonna think that they're gonna have a focus on finishing these games strong early on.
So you want a weird stat? I think I have one for you.
What do you got?
So based on last year, if the Tiger Cats score 24 or more points, undefeated. They were 7-0. If they score 20 or fewer points, they did not win. They were 0-5. So we've got that 24 points should be a victory. If they get 20 or less, it's big trouble. So they'll have to get that offense going.
Love it. That's a good one. That's a good one. I remember at a time in the last season, late in the season, the Ticats had not won a game that they trailed at the end of any quarter. At any quarter, they had not won a game if they trailed. They could have not had the lead, but it had to be mid-quarter. But at the end of any quarter, if a team was winning, they won the game. Very interesting. I don't know.
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah. You've become a bit of a stats buff where you like some of these weird ones. Something else that I want to touch on before we wrap up, Luke, is we know the Tiger Cats have the best run defense. They proved that last year when their starters were out in the preseason. There was no real positive yardage against them. It was extremely minimal. However, this preseason, over those two games, Montreal and Toronto averaged over 380 yards passing. And they put up a ton of first downs as well. 36 of the 48 first downs, so 36 of the 48 first downs were passes. So is that showing a vulnerability on this Tiger Cats defense that if teams are going to beat the Tiger Cats, they have to be able to throw the ball?
Yeah, it is interesting. I just think all last year we were sort of harping on, and again, the preseason only shows us so much, right? I mean, there was, especially when we were at Guelph last week for the Toronto preseason game, we're not looking at the start. We're not looking at, a whole second half we had missing for our evaluation, right? And even in the first half, when you have starters in, it's hard to say what the goal is out there. Is the play calling the way that it's going to be? Are they calling to win, or are they calling to test stuff out? It's hard to get a great read on that. But all last season, hard to run against and very hard to pass against too. The secondary for the Ticats, I think, was the absolute tops in the league last year. Trading back and forth interception leaders in the league within the Ticats secondary, right?
Three East Division All-Stars in the secondary
across 5 positions. I mean, it's really an impressive group. So, a repeat of those strengths I think is in no way a bad thing if they can put that back on. And you got to get a first down somehow. But there's only 2 ways to do it. You can run it or you can pass it. So you got to choose which one to go with.
Well, we're excited at the Ticats Audio Network. We've had part of the team with an AM 900 CHML. We added News Talk Saga 960 AM. Now we're adding 1460 CJOI, CJOY in Guelph, and City News 570 in Kitchener. So the Ticats Audio Network is expanding. You can listen to the game on any of those radio stations or on ticats.ca. It's 7 o'clock kickoff. First game of the year, the Tiger Cats are in Regina to take on the Roughriders. Pre-game will go at 6 o'clock. Bubba O'Neill with Andy Fantus. Final thoughts to you, Luke. Going into this game, what are you hoping to see from the Tiger Cats for them to be successful?
First game last year out west, Winnipeg, and they did get off to a fast start. There was a great touchdown drive to start off the 2021 season. But after that, it was really, really a struggle out west to put positive plays together. I think you've got to go out to a tough city like Regina, a tough place to win a game, no matter what team and what part of the year. It's just hard to win out there. You've got to get out there and you got to keep the ball in your hands all night. So you have to control your first down efficiency. You have to keep your drives progressing. And if you continue to stall out in that first quarter, the Ticats it's going to be hard to claw back. It's going to be hard to stop that backward slide and to restart and move in the right direction. So I'd like an efficient, a clean first quarter of football so the Ticats can sort of feel out that stadium without having to give up points in order to do so.
Awesome, Luke. Looking forward to seeing you Saturday and calling game 1.
Awesome, RJ. I'll see you there, man. This will be great.
I'm RJ Broadhead. He's Luke Tasker. We are calling the Riders and Ticats on the Ticats Audio Network on Saturday. Pregame at 6, kickoff at 7 o'clock.
It's been another busy week for your Hamilton Tiger Cats. Luke Tasker and RJ Broadhead have covered it all, and now we would like to hear from you. Email us anytime at gameday@ticats.ca. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.